Hi, and welcome to the Biz Dynamics Academy Management and Leadership Review podcast. I'm your host, Professor Greta Kishbaugh. In this podcast, we're going to look at leadership and management books, current ones, and some from the past that are still valid even in today's tumultuous times. That's a big word, tumultuous. I couldn't wait to say that. If I'm mispronouncing it, please forgive me. So welcome, and we're glad that you're here today, and we hope you learned something new and something that you can share. Hi everyone, it's Professor Kishbaugh, and this podcast I'd like to talk about management, the qualitative and quantitative parts of management. I teach currently 4 different management classes. One is an intro to leadership. One is supervisory management. Another one is like an intro to business. That's a 1,000 level course. And I do teach principles of management. And the principles of management course is really designed to look at the current environment of management, to take a look at the things that we can see and feel and how they affect our business and our management structure. So there's a lot of structure in that management class, but there's also room for leadership too. So really the big difference between all of the courses is the way we look at qualitative versus quantitative research. In our quantitative mind, we're looking at the things that drive managers to, efficient behavior, okay, that kind of thing. So we're looking at how efficient is your manager? Are they effective in their management skills? Okay, so we're looking at efficiency and we're looking at management effectiveness, okay? And the quantitative look is going to give us a list of things that we can measure, that are easy to measure, okay? Like, does the manager provide the right tools for their subordinates? Does the manager have the right skills for the job? So quantitative, we're looking at skills. We're looking at things that we can measure, things that we can take a look at, things that, we can interview them, which is part of qualitative. I don't want to get you confused. We can interview the manager, but we're going to be developing more of a performance type appraisal, and the things that we're looking for management. Qualitative is what I want to talk about today. Qualitative is going to be your surveys and your, interviews and talking to people. And qualitative research obviously comes under fire from many people because of the amount of time and energy and cost involved. But you know what? These folks like Brené Brown and other management experts who've been looking at data for years, 20 years of PhD research and all of that, they see a complete value in this qualitative and in quantitative research. In our instance, I do in 2 of my classes a leader interview. I want my students to go out and interview a leader in the community. And there's a reason for that. And I'm lucky to have found a book recently that I'm so proud of. I got it. It just came out in 2020. And it pretty much verifies everything I've been saying over the last 12 years about interviews and management and looking at leadership and management from more of a qualitative, what are they doing behavior-wise? How are they relating to individuals? If you take a look at LinkedIn, if you're looking for a new job right now on LinkedIn, you're going to notice that some of the qualifications are going to say able to work with others, able to lead a team, able to have, there's even some that say good attitude. How in the world do you measure attitude? Okay, that's not something that's quantitatively easy to measure. Do you have a good attitude? How do we know? It's going to take qualitative research to take a look at things like attitude, drive, even innovation. Now, some people can argue and say that someone who's innovative is someone who is able to create projects and be very efficient. That could be true. But an innovative person is measured, I believe, a little bit differently from someone who is not innovative. How many projects you've developed, how many successful outcomes you have. Yes, I agree. But you can also be an innovative leader and not necessarily have all those quantitative qualities. So when I first started this podcast, the goal was to do a management and leadership review of the works that are in my library. I have a lot of books. I buy a lot of business and leadership books. I have some on the Kindle as well. My office is full of books. My office at home is full of books. And the goal was to kind of review the books, kind of talk about, maybe I could talk about the author, I could talk about the subject matter and how that relates to what I'm working on today. Remember, I teach Intro to Business, Supervisory Management, Principles of Management, Operation Management. I cover pretty much all of the management courses, but I do have a leadership course as well. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. So the 4 functions of management, of course, are organizing, planning, leading, and controlling. So we do spend some time in Introduction to Business and my Operations Management class on the controlling part of management, the timing and project management. So we spend a lot of time on that in those courses. And in my management course and my leadership course, we actually spend a little more time on leadership. So over the break, I picked up a book called Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader, Herminia Ibarra. She was a professor at Harvard, and now she's at the London School of Business. She talks about authentic leadership. And if you're not familiar with that concept, I'll let you take a look at that. But her goal with this book, and she has a TED Talk, which I didn't know. I found her TED Talk. I'll put it in the description here in the podcast if you're interested in watching her TED Talk. She talks about relationships. And the most important thing that I feel in business is relationships and relationship building. You don't have any customers unless you can build relationships with your customers. It's very difficult to get a customer, to acquire a customer, but once you get that customer, you need to keep that customer. So she really stresses the importance of management to not only be flexible, we hear that a lot, but to also be able to look toward the future, using the past in some ways, but not using the past just as a means to get to the future. The idea that we're constantly changing, that we're constantly in a state of flux cannot be even more important to understand now since we all are going through this pandemic. So if you're in a situation where you want to open up your own business, or maybe you just want to find a different type of corporate job, or maybe you want to retire and do some business on the side, you need to know where your authentic leadership lives. Who are you? We talk about the why, Simon Sinek. You can look at his videos. You can talk about the how and the why and figure all that for yourself. But one of the things that I like to do with my students, as I mentioned earlier, I send them out to do interviews with leaders in the community, people that they think are leaders. They can give them a call, they can go see them in person, or whatever they want to do. But she talks about that. And she even talks about spending 3 weeks meeting different types of heroic leaders, is what she calls them. So I don't care what type of leader my students go out and talk to. I just want them to get a feeling for the fact that someone that you feel represents a leader in the community, someone that you can aspire to be, whether it's a mentor, a mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent. It could be your pastor. It could be just somebody you work with, a work colleague. I want you to understand the value of understanding other people and building those relationships. In fact, she mentions here in the TED Talk how important it is to even have relationships if you do work in a corporation, getting to know the people that are part of all the teams that make up what you're working on. She uses the example of someone who didn't get a promotion because they didn't understand the team dynamic within their organization, which is a long stretch, but it tells you a lot about keeping relationships, keeping up on track on what's happening in your organization if you do work for a corporation, or if you're working as an entrepreneur, keeping up to date with the people that you need to know. Where do your customers hang out? How do you get to know them? Where do you find them? And when you do find them, how do you reach out to them? And it's all about keeping your network open. So I have my students go out, they do the leader interview, and they just kind of come back and give us some information. But what you could do if you're looking for something to get you back on track, go out and talk to people that you want to be. If there's someone that they're an executive leader at a large organization, reach out to them. If there's someone that that's got a very successful entrepreneurial business, reach out to them. Many people will give you an interview right now on Zoom. All you have to do is say, hey, I'm putting together a podcast. Come on down. And they're not going to say no. Okay. And if they say no, it might be a time issue and maybe you can work it out in the future. Or maybe the best advice is to say, hey, if I can't talk to you, who could you recommend that could help me? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to take that as an insult and they're going to want to interview with you. So take that risk. So I'm going to put the information in the description box here in the podcast. So if you want to take a look at Professor Ibarra's work and what she's doing with authentic leadership, she talks a lot about that. I think what I've gotten most out of this book is the idea of keeping in touch with people. You know, it's not just being a manager and focusing on the bottom line and focusing on the quantitative. It's taking that qualitative approach, that interview approach, that observation approach. And over time, she recommends you follow some of these heroes over 30 days, taking that approach and looking at relationships and situations. What kind of situations have they, progressed in? And a lot of leaders will tell you that they failed this past year. A lot of really good leaders are going to tell you that they didn't know what to do this past year. And they were flying by the seat of the pants. We're going to hear that a lot, flying by the seat of your pants, okay? It sounds horrible. And for those young people who've never heard of that expression, it sounds horrible, but it's true. Working with the uncertainty and being able to distinguish between what's uncertain and what's certain is what's going to make you a really good leader. You've got to be open to challenging the status quo. There is no room for status quo right now. If you're in an organization or you're running your own business and you want to go back to the way you used to do it before, that's not going to happen. It's not possible. Now, you can take the things that were working in the past with the things that you did while you were flying on the seat of your pants, and you can merge those two together. But I think what Professor Ibarra is saying in this book is that you need a little bit of both. You need to take the past things that were working for you, understand how uncertain the future is, and really take that take the spontaneity, all the things you had to do while you were flying by the seat of your pants, and merge it all together to get a really good idea. And that might mean talking to people who have made it, who did good things during this pandemic, who pivoted, who moved forward, who allowed themselves to get out of their comfort zone. So when you're looking at leadership and you're looking at management, the qualitative side is going to tell you that you need to observe the behaviors and the changes that the person, the individual, the corporation went through during this last year. And that will give you a really good idea of where you'd like to go and continue to learn. That's not the end of it. You'll continue to learn from that. So thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Coming up this month, I'm going to try to keep you up to date on the challenges facing managers today in relation to the work that I'm doing with my students and the work that I'm doing in the community. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you take a look at some of our interviews that we did last year, and there'll be more interviews to come. If you need any more information, just send me an email at bizdynamicsgroup@gmail.com. Thank you very much and have a wonderful year.